people were dropping like flies around me. People were relapsing. The recovery success rate isn't that high. And that scared me. And going into recovery, that's partially why I was scared, because I knew how slim the window of success was, how the odds were stacked against me that I would be successful in recovery. But here I am, successful thus far in recovery, and I've never felt better. So I want to talk a little bit about the early days of my recovery and what kept me going and what kept me sober and how I've maintained a year of sobriety today. Getting sober is scary. 20 odd years of my life I was using. I had no idea what it meant to get sober, and that scared me. I tried getting sober for about 6 of the last 20 years of my addiction, but I had all these false starts. And I think I had all these false starts getting sober for a little bit and then relapsing because I wasn't 100% dedicated to getting sober. There's still a part of me that was hanging on to my old lifestyle. There was a part of me that wanted to keep living in the sin, to keep pleasuring myself, to keep seeking pleasures of the self, of the flesh, living in the world, living for material desires. The only thing I knew was seeking that next hit of pleasure by any means necessary. And that had dumbed me down to the point where I didn't know what it was like to actually live a sober life. And that scared me. It scared me because I knew if I was to get sober, everything in my life would have to change. I would have to give up my current way of living, my past life. It's like shedding skin. It's a painful and scary process. So while getting sober is scary, and I was scared, frightless, to get sober, I'm so glad that I did it. But what kept me sober in those early days was the fear of relapsing. I was so scared of relapsing and throwing away my progress and failing that that fear kept me from actually relapsing. Now, those early days of recovery, I'm not talking about the first couple weeks. I'm talking about the first quarter of a year. So the first 3-4 months when I was freshly out of a 90-day program, I was out on my own, out back in the world. Well, I had these thoughts of relapsing, and I thought that relapsing would be an easier way to live than fighting tooth and nail day by day to stay sober. Every day was a battle. Every hour, every minute, every second was a battle to stay sober. And people were dropping like flies around me. People were relapsing. The recovery success rate isn't that high. And that scared me. And going into recovery, that's partially why I was scared, because I knew how slim the window of success was, how the odds were stacked against me that I would be successful in recovery. But here I am, successful thus far in recovery, and I've never felt better. So what really kept me sober in those early days of recovery when I was out on my own and I was fresh as a babe was the thought of relapsing and just throwing away all of my progress and failing. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be the one that would just succumb with the rest of the masses in relapse. I wanted to be the one that made it. I wanted to be the one person, one of the ones who did it once and got out. I don't ever want to go through recovery again. I'm done with it. I've wasted so many years of my life. I don't need to be repeating those same mistakes. So the fear of relapsing is what kept me sober in my early days of recovery. Now, I had thoughts of relapsing and thoughts of going back to my old ways. This is the thought I had in my first month out of the program, the recovery program, when I was out on my own. My thought was, I'm going to go hang out with some old buddies and have a coffee with them. The thing is, the old buddies are meth heads. And my thinking was I was going to go have a coffee with some meth heads. Just meet up for coffee and casually chat the shit, shoot the shit. And no big deal. I would be able to maintain my sobriety and control myself. So when I told a friend this plan of mine, this botched plan, this idea, this dumb idea, he recited what I just told him and then looked at me and said he felt ashamed that I was even thinking of that. And he pointed out how stupid of an idea that was to go hang out and have coffee with a couple of meth heads and think that I would be able to stay sober and not go back into my old habits of using. That's one of my early thoughts I had in recovery. And I think if I had actually played that thought out, if I had actually gone through with that, I might not be here today a year sober. So I'm so glad that I told somebody the thoughts that I was having, the stinking thinking, the crazy thoughts that run through your mind as an addict. You got to get that out of your head. I had to get that out of my head. So I externalized that. I told somebody, they gave me their honest opinion, and that snapped me back to reality. And I thought better of myself. So getting sober is scary, but for me, relapsing is even scarier, especially today. After a year of sobriety, I have so much more to lose today that I don't want to throw that progress out the window. I don't want to throw that away. I want to keep building on the foundation that I've laid, and I want to launch into my new life. I want to start my life, and I want to keep moving forward. And I didn't think that I could get sober in the beginning, and I definitely didn't think that I would maintain it long term, but here I am. So in the beginning, the early days, relapsing felt easier. It felt like it was an easy way out because it is a struggle getting sober. 3-4 months of sobriety after 20 years in addiction is nothing, right? So how can I think that I'm going to be cured in 3-4 months when I have almost a generation worth of addiction in my life? So if I can tell you something good about being a year sober, the thoughts of relapsing are far and few between. I don't think about drinking as much. I've really dropped. The urges have really diminished over, I would say, I got over the hump probably around the 8th or 9th month of sobriety. And now going into my second year of sobriety, it feels like a drop in the water is what the urges feel like. Whereas before, the urges were like buckets poured over my head, buckets of water poured over my head. And it was hard to get dry. It was hard to dry off from that. But just a single drop of water, a single rain droplet, you hardly feel that. So that's what it feels like today. And I didn't think I could do it, but I did it. I didn't think I could get sober, but I got sober. So if you're thinking about getting sober, but you're scared to do it, I would advise you to do it anyways, because that fear is an indicator of the direction that you should be moving into, right? There's going to be a level of uncertainty in getting sober, but certainty lies on the other side of action. Once you take that action, that step to get sober, you'll become more certain that it's the right step as you move forward along those steps of sobriety. But you have to take the first step. You have to get sober. Once you get sober, once you achieve a significant amount of time sobriety, you'll laugh at the thought of fearing to get sober. You'll question why you didn't get sober sooner. So, if you enjoy what I talk about, check out this video for more.